Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa coming to you from our mobile studio here, and I want to continue to go into our brand new series on the deep diving into the spiritual traditions of mankind, and starting with the traditions with which I am most familiar, and that is Islam. And what I wanted to do is just basically go into a few basic principles of Islam in regards to how it ties in with law of assumption, law of attraction, and applying these principles for massive success in daily life. Because remember, simply studying the theoretical, it can be fun. But even according to the Islamic tradition, according to the ulama, and according to other spiritual traditions, simple intellectual studying of it without practice deadens the heart, and it does no good. And we can tie this in with the Quran. Even according to the Islamic tradition, the Quraysh, they understood the principle that La ilaha illallah, and they understood that Allah was the creator. They understood Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, which means that the understanding of the lordship and that Allah is the ultimate cause, that He is the creator, and so on. But what they did not get was Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. They didn't take action on that and truly make their desires and goals one. How we can interpret it in the case of this course is that we need to truly know that the physical reality is an illusion, and then we have to behave as such. It has to manifest in our actions. Only when we behave as such, only when it manifests in our actions, are we going to get results. And that is another paradox. And indeed, a few weeks ago, I did do a video on paradox. When you're in this course, and when we're trying to manifest on the physical what we draw from the spiritual, we have to get used to paradoxes. And those can all be solved when you see these concepts and issues on different levels on the scale of being. Watch my video on the scale of being for more insight into that. So, let us begin in earnest here. I went into in our introduction that the Quran is a very interesting book, and it has many layers of interpretation. I believe Imam Ali alayhi salam said that the Quran has 7 levels of interpretation. I think 1 or 2 of which, and I'll have to read the exact quotation, 1 of 2 of which are physical and literal, and the others are spiritual. The others are interior, and depending on the purity of your heart, the purity of your soul, which is tazkiyatun nafs in the Islamic tradition, and from the point of view of our course, this is according to which you are less conditionally tied to the aspects of physicality will you be able to see it. Only when you're free, ladies and gentlemen, of the chains of the physical will you be able to see the deeper metaphysical meanings. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Jordan Peterson. His study of different traditions and his weaving them together in a sort of syncretism is exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to do on this channel. And he is reminiscent of the great Fridtjof Schuon and the great René Renon, who were traditionalists and who took the kernel of truth from every tradition and put them into one. Indeed, the Quran talks about this. When it says, for example, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولٍ فَلْيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ, said that we raised a prophet from every member of mankind, and basically we told them to worship God and to turn away from the false gods, which in this case is this idolatry of the physical. We can go into that. And so every single spirituality of mankind has that kernel of truth. And so we can pierce into them, and we can find the commonalities, and then we can teach them in a way that we can apply them for indeed massive success. But we can't do it without intention, because that would be riyah, and then it would negate the whole process. This is the creative tension that you have to hold on to while you're listening to this course and while you're learning these principles and learning how to manifest. So, the first principle in law of assumption and Islam is that there's one cause, there's one ultimate reality only. And Islam, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the ultimate cause and the ultimate reality. And the Quran is probably the best text in existence that we have that really drives this home. The Bible, of course, has a lot of these aspects where it goes into, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." The Quran drives this home in a way that I think no other scripture does. And we can just give some examples here. So of course, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ هَدَى اللَّهُ وَمنهم من حقت عليه الضلالة فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. So it says that he sent messengers to every member of mankind, basically, and it said, worship Allah and reject the whole physical idolatry, because it's really non-existent. If it had existence, then it would have power, but it has no power, therefore it has no existence. And then, of course, he said, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ هَدَى اللَّهُ. Among them were people that Allah guided, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ حَقَّتْ عَلَيْهِ الضَّلَالَةِ. And among them was basically, I think this means that the misguidance had a right upon them, so took them. And it says, فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Travel around the world and look at the end of those who were liars. And you can see all great civilizations. How did the Egyptian civilization, who we know must have had very advanced technology, and indeed very advanced spiritual technology, to build these pyramids and to build up these massive structures that our engineers still can't figure out today, how were they destroyed? Even when they have the spiritual knowledge, they started to seek the physical for the sake of the physical, and they did turn away from the true cause, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why they were destroyed. And you can read the stories of Ad and Thamud, and you can even read the biblical stories to see why people were destroyed. This is why, because they start, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, ladies and gentlemen, every day, and that's why I don't believe in the concept, and on this channel we don't teach the concept of enlightenment. Because it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, any day, no matter what your knowledge is, you can always choose to invest power in the material causes, because it's what's right in front of you. And when you do that, that is indeed shirk, that is indeed idolatry, and that's what's going to get you off this path, and is indeed going to destroy your success in this worldly life. So, another verse. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم. So this is describing the people who, in this course we can say, each day are becoming more unconditional and are focusing upon the true cause. It says that this is specifically talking about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And by the way, the metaphysical meaning of Rasul or Muhammad really go into the works of Fridtjof Schuon, who is a great perennialist and scholar of Islam. And he spoke about how the Rasul means this is the merging point between God and man. And this is what is the bridge between the physical and the non-physical. So Rasulullah or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means the most praised one, and there's a metaphysical reason for that, he's the bridge between the physical and the non-physical, bringing the non-physical to physical and then manifesting upon the physical. That's why, in opposition to Isa or to Jesus, he was a very worldly prophet in the sense that he had a worldly possession, but at the same time he was completely disconnected from him. As we know from the ahadith, he used to sleep on a bed, for example, that left marks upon his body. He lived in a very small house, and yet all the wealth of the Kisra and the Caesars and so on were his. This is an archetype or a prototype for how we're supposed to live. This is not a legalistic thing saying that we're to eschew physical property. No, we're to enjoy it. But we're in our minds, we are to know that this is simply a congealed spiritual mass, and that we can let go of it at any time, because indeed we can create it at any time. And as Neville Goddard said, take away the building from me, as long as I have the knowledge to create another building, I don't care how many buildings you take away from me. This is the true metaphysical meaning of this, metaphysical meaning of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it said, of course, they're merciful to themselves and they're harsh upon the disbelievers. These are aspects, this can be understood as aspects in ourselves, which means that when we have a thought that is negative or disbelieving or is not to believe, we don't have mercy on that thought. We don't focus on it. We completely ignore it. As another verse in the Quran says, أَعْرِضُوا عَنِ الْجُهَالِ, something like this. Turn away from the ignorance. Turn away from the negative thoughts. And the concept in this course, the metaphysical meaning of that, and they're gentle on the believers. So those thoughts that are believing and that are supporting our projects, that are making us get into good feeling and a high place on the emotional scale, we welcome those and are merciful towards those. Remember, all of these ayat have to be understood as something within you, and even the great mufassirin talk about this, and we'll go into this perhaps in further videos, but the great interpreters talk about this. تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا. So these people, they have marks on their foreheads from prostrating, and this is a symbol of you turn to Allah in the Islamic tradition 5 times a day, in Shia tradition or Jewish tradition 3 times a day, and this is a symbol for we went into a video for meditating 100 times a day, which means that you turn in remembrance to the true cause frequently, especially when you forget. So when we're focused on the physical, when we think that our problems are outnumbering us and so on and so forth, that are overcoming us, we turn back to the truth. And that is La ilaha illallah. That is that nothing in the physical has any effect upon me. That is indeed circumstances do not matter, only state of being matters. And this is the way to remain in state. You keep turning to that. This is not necessarily a physical or legalistic aspect, although in one interpretation it could be. سيماهم في وجوههم سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود, the marks on their foreheads. ذلك مثلهم في التوراة. This is the likeness for them in the Torah, and this is bringing the traditions together, because we have them in the Torah, we have them in the Gospel, and we have them in the Quran, and indeed in every religious work. ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فأزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار. So again, these are they're referred to in other scriptures, and I think the gospel talks about that it's like a field and that's receptive, and so on and so forth. وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. Allah promises for those who believe and do pious deeds, and for the sake of this course, the only pious deed is a deed done from a pure heart, and that is from pure inspiration. It's not a deed done out of fear, it's not a deed done because we're trying to get something done on the outer, but it is from pure inspiration. You're inspired to act and you act, and then you will definitely be rewarded. This is talking about the oneness of Allah. Also, going into this, the Quran talks a lot about how the dunya, or this world, is illusory. It basically talks about la'ibun wa lahu. This dunya is la'ibun wa lahu. It is complete illusion and complete play. And we can go into that. Also, another very interesting aspect of the Quranic methodology and modality, and the way it relates to new thought and the teachings that we go into on this channel, is that Islam says that we chose to come here. The Quran says that we indeed chose to come here. And this fits in with physics, and it fits in with what the new thought authors are telling us, and also other ancient religions. And it says Allah, إِذَا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَنْ يَحْمِلَنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. It basically says that Allah asked the mountains and the heavens to take on this great task of coming down to earth, and only mankind responded and said, yes, we will. And it says he was an oppressor unto himself, and he was ignorant in doing that. And we don't know what this means. There are different interpretations as to what that means, but basically we chose to come here. And in another ayah, Allah asked the people before they came, do you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one? Do you accept this? And they said, قَالُوا بَلَى. They said yes. So everyone before they came knew the truth. You came into this reality knowing the truth, and you came for the pleasure of it, for the pleasure of coming into multiplicity, so that you could understand the true unity. The Quran goes into this and says this. So we went into the dunya as an illusion, and إِنَّمَا حَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا دَارُ الْغَرَارِ things like this. إِنَّمَا الدُّنْيَا فَنَا. The Quran is just replete with this. We can't go into all of the ayat about the dunya being an illusion. And we know that 3D is an illusion. Hinduism goes into Maya. The Christianity talks about the world of Caesar. It is an illusion. And so when you see it as an illusion, then the illusion becomes fun and it becomes a play. But when you see it as reality, ladies and gentlemen, then it becomes hard, and getting things that you want become hard. The Quran is also replete with remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran says, وَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. And it also says, basically, if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He answers immediately. Allah is near, and it also says أَقْرَبُ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. He's nearer to you than your jugular vein. So, as the new thought authors teach us, and as all metaphysical traditions teach us, He is not even so far as to be near. You are it. Reality is one at base. Everything else is an illusion, and you need to remember that. It's called dhikr in Islam. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember the finiteness of the illusion, and remember that no cause is here. So circumstances do not matter. So the Quran is replete with this as well. Also it goes into tawakkul. The great ayah of Islam, and what many Muslims repeat, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. And it also says, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever trusts in Allah, He is sufficient for him. And this state of sufficiency, when you have that, then the whole doors of reality and the doors of the world are open to you, because you don't need anything now. You're just approaching it from a mindset of play, and from a mindset of, what can we do here? How can we expand here? But you're not worried about anything. And that can only come from an interior knowing of Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, that Allah is sufficient for us, that the unseen and that the non-physical is sufficient, and then you can manifest anything in the physical that you want. It also talks a lot about rizq. Allahur Razzaq. Allah is the one who gives provision, and therefore you don't need to seek your provision, because your provision in Islam is already written. And it's interesting how Vadim Zeland also talks about this in Reality Transurfing, where when you enter into a film role, the script is now predestined, predetermined, and under compulsion. You can change the film role and change the script, but once you're in the script, it is written, as Islam says, it is maktub, and it is your qadr. So within the film role, you must accept your qadr. And ironically, by accepting the qadr, by accepting what is written, you can get out of that and go to another film role. And indeed, there's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the only thing that can change the qadr, that can change what is written, is dua. And dua in Islam means supplication, and we of course know that it means knowing that the thing is done. So just another few things. We always take inspired action in Islam. And the prophets and the great spiritual figures of the Quran took inspired action, and they did it without knowing the results. So Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Jesus, when she was pregnant, she was told to shake the palm tree. And of course, no one could shake the base of a palm tree, but she did it in faith and in iman. And when that happened, the result came, that springs came under her, and so on and so forth. Also, she was given food simply in her dwelling place, and this is in the Quran also, without her doing anything. This is the act of manifestation, and it is pure iman and pure faith. And when you have that iman, when you have that faith as the grain of the mustard seed, everything that you need and want is instantly manifested into your reality. This is indeed, the Quran is replete with this. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was told to go on the journey, he went on the journey, and he did not ask what was going to be the result of that. He and his wife traveled alone, and so on and so forth. You can read the stories in the Quran of this. Finally, imagination. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had great imagination. There was a hadith where he was sitting by the Kaaba, and the Sahaba, the companions, were complaining about being persecuted. And basically he said, this was when he was in Mecca, he was as an oppressed minority, he had no power. But he said there will come a time when a woman will walk I think, from Yemen to Syria, and she will fear no one except Allah, which means that the Islamic establishment would be established over all the earth. He saw this even when the circumstances were 360 degrees to the contrary. So we must imagine, we must dwell in that, and we must believe in that and have faith in that. So ladies and gentlemen, these are just a few aspects, and we're going to go into more, of how the Quran is replete with references for this philosophy and modality of applying the principles of spirituality and philosophy in order to attain worldly success. But you can't do it for the sake of worldly goods. You have to do it simply for the sake of the process and for the sake of taking the steps. All great spiritualities of mankind teach these teachings. This is the perennial philosophy, and we will be going into more videos on spirituality. I just felt prompted to make this video, to go into some of the Quran and to explain how it applies to the law of assumption and the law of attraction. We'll be making more videos this week, and until very soon, with great love and appreciation, this is Javier with The Real Javier Novo, and I will see you soon. Thank you.